shock horror, the majority of the world doesn't understand tech and is very scared of it.
Time is money, so spend yours listening to me talk about things that are important to me and my people.
Time is money.
Hello and welcome to Minisode 22. Let me set a timer as well because I don't have long when I record on this. Honestly, guys, the struggle is real. The sooner more of you can just promote me to everyone and everything, the sooner I can be free of living like this. I want to be in lights. I want to be in the studio all the time, but it costs money. I would love to give you crisp. Do you know the other day I posted a snippet of last week's episode and my partner sent me the snippet and was like, the quality, why would you even post this? And I just rage filled me, obviously, because how dare you? But also it's like, I'm doing the best I can. Best I can with what I've got. It's not easy, don't get me wrong. But I would like to think that people are appreciating it. Everyone's got to start somewhere. And when I look at the field that I'm in of podcasters, and I'm not talking podcasters that went on Love Island, came out and did a podcast, or have a massive following already and then do a podcast. This is all I do. I don't have another thing that's made me, people must really engage with this to want to be part of this. So it is nice and it's good. I'm happy and I'm appreciative, but I would love it faster and more if we could. It's ironic because today we're actually talking about my 9 to 5. I almost feel like I'm introducing my lover to my husband. Podcast is definitely my lover. I go to work every day and meet the husband, which is tech. I work in tech. Now I'm going to kick it off. What does it mean to work in tech? Because people use it as a term all the time. Work in tech, work in tech, work in tech. And I do that as well. According to ChatGPT, working in tech generally refers to being employed in the technology industry. Technology. This can span in a variety of roles, industries and organisations. Some common characteristics that define it are software and apps, building, maintaining, selling software or mobile apps, hardware, developing, manufacturing physical devices, computers, smartphones, chips, IT services, managing IT infrastructure, technical support for businesses, emerging technologies, so innovations like AI, blockchain, quantum computing or robotics, and then tech-enabled industries, so healthcare, health tech, finance, fintech, education, edtech. So if someone says to you, I work in tech, likelihood is they fall into somewhere there. Don't be fooled though. A lot of people like to say they work in tech because they work for a company which is a tech company, but their role is totally non-techie. And I've been caught with that a few times. Early in the game when I first started working in tech and I was shouting about it, every single new person I met was like, oh my God, you work in tech. So do I. And then they would say whatever they do. And it's thank God you led with that, because if you didn't say that you worked in marketing and you just left it as I work in tech, I, who also works in tech, might then have started on what I do, which is a bit more technical, and we would have just had a really blank, long, boring interaction. And just a rule of thumb, if someone says to you they work in tech and that's all they say, they're saying that because they know that you don't know much about this industry. So you're not going to know unless you are also something techie. There's no point doing this because now I've got to explain to you what I do. You're going to have no clue. I'm going to have to sit there trying to explain. It's labour. So just if someone says they work in tech, just be like, okay, cool. Unless you are a technical person or have some kind of connection to it. And the connection can't be that your friend's boyfriend works as a data engineer. There needs to be more, all right? So just housekeeping for this topic. So yeah, I had a really, really tough week last week at work, and I thought I shout a lot about the positives of working in tech. If you don't know how I got into tech, I'm not going to spend the minisode because I'm down to 21 minutes now before this camera stops, but I've got loads of videos where I've spoken about it. I've gone on different podcasts and guested talking about how I got into tech. So I will put a few in this minisode bio so you can have a look. But essentially, I did a full stack developer course, which is a coding course. I learnt to code. And then I got my first role as a solutions engineer, which is actually a type of business analyst, but because it was a startup, I did loads of roles within that role. And then I became a technical analyst for an ad agency, and now I'm a technical architect for a consultancy. Google what all of those things mean because I'm not going to explain them to you here. But what inspired me to have this episode is the reality of it, because people look at working in tech, as I did, hence why I joined, and they think lots of money, lots of benefits, and cool. That's the general consensus. And you've got to be so smart. Oh my God, you must be so smart. That's what I get all the time when I tell people I work in tech. That's if we even get that far, because if tech throws them, then I just say IT. And if IT throws them, then I just try and change subject, because I just don't have time for this. There are good benefits. It is well paid, good benefits with most companies. And you are on the emerging side of things in society, because we rely on tech for everything every day now. So it's a good place to be. But there's a very dark side to working in tech that I don't talk about often, and I've been waiting for a platform to do that. And then I remembered you're only a podcaster and you only have your own podcast with your name in it, so you might as well use that, my love. And I'm just letting it all out, really. So I asked you to ask me questions, and I will address most of them, but I am also going to focus on what it is I want to talk about. So I'm going to see what questions actually speak to what I was upset about. So what does your day-to-day look like? That's a good one. So being a technical architect, a lot of my job is translation. So I work, as I said, I work for a consultancy. I'll get put on a project and I'm the technical person on that project. You have a business analyst who is the person who looks at the business process. So what are we trying to achieve here? What are the requirements for this product or app or whatever it is we're building to work? What does the business think about this? What does the business think about that? Business. Then you've got the project manager, delivery manager, whatever. This is the person who manages the people. And by people, I mean the stakeholders, which is the client, keeps them happy, and us, the people who are behind the scenes doing the project stuff. And then you have me. In this role, I'm the technical architect, but in other roles, the technical person could be the developer, it could be the DevOps person, it could be the security person. There's going to be someone technical, basically, for what you need. Now, the technical person's role, so in my case, as the technical architect, my job is to understand how this whole thing works technically. And I then also need to spend a lot of my job translating what this technical stuff means to the people who don't get it. Because shock horror, the majority of the world doesn't understand tech and is very scared of it. If you're in a position like I am where your whole job is to explain things, you have to get very good at explaining things and summarizing things and making analogies on the spot and making everyone feel like, okay, I get it. I find that quite natural. As you know, I'm a talker, so that's fine. However, the side of the job that I really struggle with is, if you are, like I said, the technical person, people then lose the ability to think. They just feel like, oh, she's technical, she'll do that. They're technical, they can handle that. Oh, they're the technical ones, yeah, they'll do that. And people just start to give you unnecessary work, things that they could do, but because you've got T in your title, they're like, yeah, they'll do that. And I'm not going to say that this is everybody's experience, because it's not. And often I speak to my male colleagues who are male technical architects, and they don't have the same experience. So it's quite curious that as a woman in tech, that's what happens. So very much so, I feel like as a woman, because you're still in an industry which is not traditionally very welcoming of women, and there's not very many women in this industry, you are still seen as the help a bit. And I have had situations where I've been in board meetings and they've suggested that I take the notes or I write on the whiteboard or just inappropriate things like that. And when I did my coding course, I had a mentor and she said to me, if you want to work in tech, you're going to need ovaries of steel. And at the time I thought, oh, all right, because I'm coming from fitness, like I'm full of sleazy men left, right and centre. But this isn't sleazy men. This is men who are typically quite uncomfortable around women, and now they're in a work environment with you. They don't know how to be apart from rude. That's just their default. And also, to be in tech, you do have to have a brain that works in a certain way for a lot of the roles, and often that usually goes hand in hand with some type of highly talented and intelligence, which is sometimes the result of Asperger's or autism and being on the spectrum in general. And so that means that if you're going to be really, really good at that thing, the downside of that is, from a social perspective, you might not be the best. And again, that can be quite hard when you're dealing with somebody who you need to deal with because you need this person for your project or whatever, but They don't want to make any eye contact with you. They do not want to speak to you. And God forbid you crack a smile and have a normal conversation. So that can be hard. And all of these things are a culmination of why some weeks or some days are so hard, because you might have a whole day of dealing with men the entire day that you need to speak to, that you're dependent on to build something for you or give you the answers that you need. But their whole MO, it feels like, is to not help you. And when I'm saying this, some women or some people might be listening to this being like, oh wow, that's mad. But some people might be like, yep, sounds like work. So I don't think this is just a tech thing. This could be a thing everywhere. But the difference is, in tech, because it's such a new thing, there are people there who really are the only people that know the answers, and you have to go to them. In other industries, I feel like you can get around it because there's other people that you can like go to. But in tech, it's like, it's them or no one. And because of that, they're protected. They're very protected. So there's people I've worked with, not necessarily in this role, but in other roles, who have been the most unhelpful, rude, disrespectful, worst individuals you can think of. And every single person has the same complaint about them. And you're like, but why are they still here? Why has nothing been done? I thought you're all about the people. You've got a people team. What's going on? And it's because without that person, this whole company falls apart, because unfortunately, they're the ones with the info. So you get a lot of men, sadly, in tech who gatekeep information. And then as a woman, you've got the double edge of trying to get the information just within your role, which they don't want to talk to you anyway. And now because you're a woman, you've made them feel even more uncomfortable. So there's defo no convo happening. So that does make days hard. I think that's answered what my day-to-day looks like. Also, there's a lot of diagram drawing in my duties. Realities of being an ethnic woman in tech. I love this question. I feel like being an ethnic woman in tech is something that's hard because we have British privilege. I'm going to talk about Britain. We've got British privilege. So we speak with an English accent. We have certain expectations. We know what racism is. We know what microaggressions are. And there's certain things we will stand for, certain things we won't stand for. But in tech, it's a very international industry. So you're often working with people who are also ethnic, but they might have been born and brought up in different countries. Asia, Africa, Caribbean, wherever. So therefore, their bar or their tolerance of what's okay is very different to yours. And so often, if you are ethnic and you're working in tech, I found from my experience, and I'm not saying this is everybody's, you find your people, and they're people who look like you or who get it on some level. If they're not from the UK as well, they have a very different bar to what you might accept. And so that means that you're screaming in the dark or screaming, whatever the saying is, basically, no one can hear your screams because you're saying, how is it okay for this person to routinely get my name wrong and confuse me for the other brown girl who looks nothing like me? And they're like, oh, that's nothing. You can't band together because they don't feel like they have the right to advocate for themselves because they've been made to feel like they're lucky to be here. So it's hard because you can't fight as a one. And then if you do try and fight as a one, they will say, well, no one else has got this problem. And then you'll look around at all the people who have the same problem and who've come to you and been like, oh, I hate when they do this, I hate when they do that. And they're silent. And you're like, what? Like, I thought we all had the same problem. And they just don't show up, basically. So it makes you look like a bit of a dick and it's not fun. So it's hard being an ethnic woman in tech because, like I said, there's the whole difficult people in tech in general. You make them uncomfortable because you're a woman. Now you're an ethnic woman, so you're aware of all these other microaggressions and things that go on. It's long. But I also feel like that is probably not just a tech-specific thing. That's probably like an every industry thing. What is work-life balance? Now, I think this is probably the pro of tech. And I think that's why it's hard sometimes to be heard when you have complaints. Last week, had a hard week, called my friend, spoke about it. And even though it's long and even though I'm pissed off and I feel like I've been undervalued this week and people are just pushing my buttons and putting extra work on my plate, I still log off at latest 5:30. Like, you will not catch me working past 5:30. And that's like if I've got stuff to do. If I don't, I'm logging off before then. So you are given a lot of autonomy of when you start and finish and things that you do in your day. And you obviously, the massive one is you don't have to work from the office that much. You work from home mainly. I feel like there is a good work-life balance, but I think that you make up for that and you pay for that with those other dynamics I just mentioned, which can get really tricky. It's very hard when you're tasked with something to do. Like, you've got to do this job, basically. The whole basis of that job is getting information from the person in front of you. And the person in front of you is looking in your face and they're not giving you the information. And there's no reason for them to not give it to you other than they don't want to. That's a hard one to deal with, and I feel like that is quite tech specific. But like I said, this is my experience only, and I'm going to post these snippets, and I'm sure people in the comments will put me to right and say that's obviously not the right experience, blah, 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 blah. So, you know, it's based on individuals, but from my reality of working in tech, this is what I found. Other thing I found as well is a lot of fake promises. Every single role I've had has said that they are an advocate for women in tech, that they love women in tech, that they should be upping the diversity of women in roles, and they should be closing the gap, and we need to make more room for women. Women are great. I can't believe there's so few, blah, 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 blah. But why is it then that every superior position is men? Why is it then that every time I have a woman-related issue, instead of being helped and supported, I am ignored and undermined? Why is it then that you don't make my life easier as a woman? So there's a lot of people saying that they're for women and they're not. And I'm now at a stage where I'm like, I'd rather you didn't say it and just paid me more. Honestly, it sounds bad, but there's a price. Everyone has a price, and I have a price. So if you want to routinely get my name wrong or make comments about women, or I'm the only woman on every single call, it's so normal for me to be the only woman on every call that I don't even notice it anymore. And it's only when new people start and they mention it that I'm like, oh yeah. If that's what you want and you're not really doing anything about it, then please don't say you're an advocate and your company really tries and strives for diversity. Just pay me a bit more. That's all I want now, because I can't keep fighting. It's long. I've only got 6 minutes left, so I'm probably gonna have to do a part 2. Is the job ever fulfilling? I think people have got this perspective of tech that like you're doing it because either you have really good skills in this job, or you're there for the pay, or you're there for the benefits, or it's something you kind of just fell into. And I feel like that's true. I don't think that unless you've started your own like tech-based company and it's to solve something, like you've created an app and you're really passionate about whatever this app does, and like, you know, certain female tech things like period tracker apps and technology that helps diagnose certain things, like that's different obviously. But if you're just bog standard Maya working in tech, you're there for the money. That's what I'm there for. So am I fulfilled? Yeah, I get fulfilled when I get paid. I've said this in previous podcasts that I've been a guest on, and also on this podcast. I don't subscribe to doing what you love. I subscribe to doing a job that is going to meet your needs, whether that be financial, social, beneficial, whatever. And that is your strengths. I think that's what we need to reframe and see as what we do as jobs. And I see so many people, younger people especially, who are so lost and they're like, oh, I'm 25 and I still don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, because you've tried to go and do something that you love, it's important to do things that you love in your life, yes, but should that always be the thing that pays you? I don't think so. I think that's too hard. I think find something that you're good at, that pays you well, so that you can afford to finance whatever it is that you love. I don't see why we don't do that more. That's definitely what I'm doing in tech. This is what I love. I would love to do this, but how hard is it for me to get paid from this? It's so hard to even get subscribers, which are free. Imagine getting money from this. Like, it's hard. So I'd rather do something that I'm very good at to finance this. What effect does this job have on you physically? I know this is different for everybody, but for me personally, obviously being a personal trainer before, I've always understood how to train and fit time in for myself to go and exercise and stuff. And I've really appreciated having my day planned out for me. So like calls get put in my calendar, left, right and centre. So then that tells me if you've got calls from 9 till 12 and then again from 2 to 4, then you've got from 12 to 2 to go gym and have lunch. And so that sort of like answers the question of when I'm going to train. And then in terms of physical, it's a choice. Like I choose to really prioritize my posture and my breaks from the desk and movement in my body. So I have a standing desk and I also have a stability ball that I work off. But then some people will just work from bed, and that's obviously not good for you physically. I feel like it's easy. Back to the like work-life balance thing. I do feel like working in tech it's not the hardest role to remain physically active and do the things that you want to do, but only if they're habits that you've already had, basically. Right, that has flown by. I hope you have a little bit more of an understanding of the reality of working in tech. This definitely needs a part 2, but I need to know what I missed on this one to know what I should include in the next one. I'm also going to put all the links to the other places I've spoken about this topic in particular in the bio, which might give you a bit more tea. And the final thing I want to close out with is, although I've said things that are quite negative here, like I said as well, I don't feel like most of it is specific just to tech. And tech does pay good. So if you're going to have to face that everywhere, face somewhere where you get a check as well. And I'm always advocating for more women to be in tech, so I'm not the only one facing this. It feels like I really am, even though there are more women in tech, and I do have women tech friends. Thank you for listening if you've made it this far. Please keep up on the socials, sharing, TikTok, Instagram, on Spotify itself. My subscribers are going up every day and I'm so happy for that. But like I've mentioned, working in tech is not my dream. I would love this to be what I do, but until then, I need you to help me make that a reality. I will see you next week, and I hope this episode was worth waiting for. Bye.